Hello to you all, and welcome to Pyramid Energy, a journey through intuition, wisdom, and loving insight. My name is Khunze. If you've journeyed with me before, welcome back, and thank you all for being here with me. What brought me here today is this feeling of a heart awakening taking place. It's felt like almost like a burning in the heart, but not heat as such. It's felt like it's coming alive in areas that it wasn't aware of before. It feels like it's feeling deeper than it was before, and it feels expectant, which is bringing up a curiosity around what is it that I'm feeling. And it's as if you can see the direction and it's pulling you, but at the same time it's also bringing through new feelings of unrecognized fear, is how I'd put it. It's bringing up feelings around whether you feel enough. And so it's as if you know you're capable of doing whatever it is that you want to do. There's just a lack of clarity on what exactly that part is. And also by expectant, I almost feel like you know that there's something new that has entered you, but it's unclear what it is and what you're meant to do for it. I'd even go as far as saying you're not sure which version of you it wants. I have a fairy card in front of me. It says transition. This fairy looks like she doesn't know what to do. She looks like she's been waiting a while. And this moon behind her brings up for me that she is completely aware that there's a whole lot that she's not privy to, that she can't see, and that she doesn't understand yet. And so it's as if she's waiting for something big. I had 22622 on the clock. So it's waiting for something big. And it's definitely bringing up a resistance. It's bringing up a resistance around wanting to move, but not sure how. And knowing this wisdom of knowing that if you don't know what to do nothing. And so that's very clear, but this wait is difficult. Before I continue, I don't usually say this, but recently I've felt really called to just say to please use your discernment. All the content that I share is based on my experiences inside of my body and as I feel the energy. And what I want to say is that it's real and I deliver it with openness. But whenever anyone engages with content, it's important that you're mindful of resonance. And if something that I say doesn't resonate, not to say necessarily click off. However, that's something you should remain aware of. And so that you're mindful as you consume, that you're looking for inspiration or you're looking for wisdom, whatever it is that you're there for or you're here for, but not to naturally assume that information is yours because you still have a choice. I've often used readings as forms of inspiration and also as sort of a route into manifestation. Because if I hear something that I don't recognize, it could be that it's something I'm not aware of. It could be that it doesn't apply to me at all. It could be that it's something I'm still going to experience. However, that's a choice I make. If there's something in the reading that resonates with me, even if it's not something I've experienced yet, I still have a choice of whether that is something I want to create for myself or not. And sometimes I'll find a solution, and sometimes I'll find a new idea. And so please remember to approach it all with honesty with yourself, because that's the word that was coming out. But what I intended to say was approach it always with an openness and never assume, never struggle with information if it's not sinking in, unless there is that curiosity for you that makes you want to, let's say, flip back, listen again, and interrogate it. So you can interrogate it, but as soon as you feel a struggle, that could be an over-attachment to what you've heard. And so this is how I believe a lot of readers come to saying, take what you need and leave the rest. And, there are various ways of saying it. But I just feel it's so important to say, because a lot of us also listen for confirmation. And so when you don't find that confirmation, don't let that discourage you or make you become despondent. This is where we maybe need to invite the observer back into us, the parts of us that can observe and learn and take in information, but not preemptively inherit it. I have 55501 on the clock, and immediately, that brought me back to this transition card, because 5 is about change. And it's actually tying me right back down to this heart awakening, because Spirit is very much trying to connect with you personally through your heart and to teach you new things about yourself. And these things are not to be learned through someone else. And so if you find, and this feels, slightly counterintuitive to share it here on the channel where I've invited you to listen, but what's coming through for me is to give the voice inside of yourself more room to be heard, more room to be engaged with. When we listen to someone else on social media or on YouTube or wherever it is, or whether it's reading that you're doing, and I'm going straight to social media because this is where we sort of get more current information on energy and changes and shifts. The first thing that's popping out here with this thread of thought that I was coming in with is there's very much the matter of divine timing. And so your divine timing is not the same as someone else's divine timing. And so while someone else might alert you with this clarity that this information has met you in divine timing, don't struggle with that if this timing is not the same as yours, because that means you've left your own path. You've left your own voice within, and you're deserting your voice within to try and meet someone else's. And so that reconciliation with oneself does need to happen. And partly what it's bringing up for me is a need to forgive yourself for what's coming up as times that you've been wrong, or you felt like you were wrong about your own information. But I want to tell you that you need to trust your own information. It's very easy for me to just tell someone else to trust their own information. And this is not something that I don't struggle with. This is something that I sometimes encounter as I go through my own shifts and transitions. And as I expand and as my knowledge of myself deepens, I sometimes wonder about timing, and I do check my back. But I've definitely found that that's where I'm being called back to my own present moment, because my experience is the most real. And that's mostly what we're here to learn. We're here to learn how to develop our own channels. Maybe not all of us, but I believe that's what I feel from this audience, is to develop a stronger channel and a stronger relationship with one's own channel, to be able to pull through whatever it is, or allow to flow through whatever it is that you are creating. And especially now, during a heart awakening, this is where your heart is asking you to listen to it, and not through someone else's language necessarily, but to really engage with yourself. What I wanted to mention earlier before this thread came in was, when you listen to someone else, it's easier to interrogate what they've said. But we don't often return to the things we say to ourselves to interrogate those. And I find that those are the most important interrogations, if there's any interrogation that's going to happen. And most importantly, because that's basically the food that's been placed on your plate. And I feel that's what's coming up for me, is that perhaps sometimes we have this feeling of scarcity with our own channel and ourselves, which then creates a negative self-talk cycle, which I want to address. But we're not minding our own plates as much as we mind other people's plates. And I don't know why this is all coming out now, because this hadn't come up for me before. But I believe it's really important, and definitely something I'm going to be looking at for myself. Roxette is coming up for me. Listen to your heart. When he's calling for you, listen to your heart. And I want to check the lyrics. But what it's bringing up for me is actually that your divine masculine is trying to speak to you. Your divine masculine is trying to give you the answers that you're seeking. I'm reading these lyrics now, and I'm just going to read you this one part. It says, sometimes you wonder if this fight is worthwhile. The precious moments are all lost in the tide. They're swept away, and nothing is what it seems. The feeling of belonging to your dreams. I don't know where you're going, and I don't know why. But listen to your heart before you tell him goodbye. What this is pointing to for me is this despondency I mentioned earlier, as I was talking about how we engage with other information through the collective. And before that song came up, there was also something else around this push and pull. And so it's as if sometimes when you're listening or you're watching, it just flows with you, and it feels like you just came upon a part of the river that you're just flowing with as well, and it feels natural and you're at ease. And in a sense, it's as if you get immersed in it. And another way that it can happen, it feels like the opposite, which is more like a resistance. But what I want to point out here is this whole relationship between the masculine and the feminine, is that what we're looking for is to come back to this peaceful balance. When one is getting ready to receive, which is this expectancy, and so you want to be able to receive, that's when the feminine is being asked to just be and listen and invite mindfulness in, and to listen to what's being said internally, to interrogate that if the need comes up, if the need arises, to ask questions. Again, it's easier to ask questions when we hear stuff externally, but to interrogate and be curious about the questions that are coming up internally, because there's a conversation happening internally that's asking for your attention. And so that's what's happening as well when we feel this resistance, because it's the pressure working, pushing you backwards into yourself. And when I say backwards, I don't mean like into reverse. I'm saying the pressure of this information is headed in your direction. So you're hearing the information and you want to absorb the information, but there's a resistance. And so this is more around following the current. And so if the current is pulling you, pushing you back into yourself, then allow it to, and follow that current. But then you're resisting if you insist on trying to climb onto a different current or into a different current to make it work. And I can almost guarantee you, the more pressure that we place on finding information a certain way, the more we delay our own information. And our own information is the information that is tailor-made for us. And another thing is that, this information arrives in our lives and in our being in the form of like water and air. And so it's all flowing. And so there's no actual separation between that information and this information. It's more a matter of, what is my experience with this portion of information that I am currently privy to in this moment? And what is it saying to me? when I take a very large step outside of this, let's say, personal relationship between you and the information you're consuming, when I take like many steps back, I'm actually able to see that this is an ocean of information. And so I actually see you as being part of that information that in that moment you're kind of having a struggle with. But how divine timing works is that it creates this channel, this pool of information that allows for you to be able to absorb that same information you're currently resisting, that's being shared in that moment. It's just your awareness that's not able to absorb it in the way that, let's say, it was delivered. And again, it was delivered the way it was intentionally, but it's divine timing that ensures that you come to understand it in a time that's right for you. And so I know this might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm rather inviting you back into the present and saying that that information is also yours. It's just not what you need in that moment. And whichever part of it is reaching you in that moment is what you need in that moment. And another reason we know this is because it's very easy to click next and change what you're listening to. But sometimes you might find yourself continuing to listen to something that you're struggling with. And so I'd say that's an invitation, because the fact that you are still in that place consuming that information says there is something in there for you. There's a mirror being held up in that moment for you. And we are all working with energy. And so if your understanding of the information that's delivered is not immediate, please also trust that you've actually absorbed that information in many other different ways. Because information doesn't only reach us consciously. It's not always around how much of the facts you've grasped and the words you've understood. There is so much happening outside of our awareness that's happening in our favor. There's a lot that takes place. And so some of it is worked through us in our sleep. Some of it pops up again for us. You might not even be consciously aware that you took in this piece of information, and then later in the day, something comes into your system, and it might feel like it came from nowhere, and you may not link it back to what you were listening to. But this is the point, is that you were exposed to it, and what you needed in that moment reached you, and what doesn't will still reach you, assuming you need it. Something is being brought back. I was writing yesterday. I was actually meditating. I wrote what I found in my meditation. But I sat for meditation. I closed my eyes and I saw a white triangle, similar to this pyramid energy triangle. And somehow it took me back to basics. And it wrote, at the top, it wrote mind. On the left corner, it wrote body. And on the right corner, it wrote soul. And it's interesting because it did not say spirit. I often say mind, body, and spirit. And then I combine heart with body. And mind is always at the top for me. And then on the right corner, I usually use the word spirit. But what was coming through was soul. And what they were showing me is this is like the conversation we have internally within our being, conscious or unconscious. And they made me write, firstly drawing arrows from each corner. So in one direction of the triangle moving across. So from mind to soul to body to mind. And I've put this on the screen so that you can see what I'm actually talking about. And then they made me draw arrows in the opposite direction, from mind to body to soul, back to mind. And what was coming through is what kind of information, what are the things that are being said by the body to the mind, by the mind to the soul? by the soul to the body. And then, reversing this, what is the soul saying to the mind? What is the mind saying to the body? And what is the body saying to the soul? And it was interesting how it unfolded, because I could fill almost every direction, every arrow I could label, except for 2. And I'm going to run you through these because in a total there's 6, right? 3 in each direction. Okay, so I asked, what is the body saying to the soul? And I wrote, I need you. And so there's this understanding that the body needs information that only the soul has. And so what is the soul saying to the mind? And I wrote here, I am. And I wrote, be at ease. And I wrote, trust. Because this is the healthy and loving message that is being sent from the soul to the mind. Because the mind is often the one that's at a struggle. And the body struggles too. And the body, because of the mind, is not always aware to revert to the soul, because the soul has all the answers. The soul, like representing also the higher self and the greater ocean of information, of loving insight. Then when it came to what is the mind saying to the body, I had a vacancy there. I couldn't place anything. I wasn't hearing anything, which is reflected in this feeling of transition, this feeling of waiting, as if the mind is going to give you answers. But then there's this vacancy. And then I moved from what is the soul saying to the body? And there I got another I am. I got another I am. And so this is consistent with the soul's voice. It's the sound of, I need you to just be, and everything will come in the right time to you. Everything will reach you in the right time to you. However, I need you to get back into your body and trust that I will send the direction that you need at the right time. And so to trust that timing and to trust that a lot of these things are handled, that you're not missing something. And when I got to what is the body saying to the mind, I wrote, please listen. I wrote, I want to talk to you. And so while the body relies on the mind, the body does try to access the mind and speak to the mind. And this is in this current energy where the mind is not at ease. And so this is the message from the body, is to be mindful. And I'm going to come back to this concept of mindfulness because it came through quite a bit in my downloads as well. But when I got to what is the mind saying to the soul, I was met by another vacancy. And so both of these vacancies, these 2 vacancies out of the 6, were coming from the mind. What we need to be aware of about the mind is that whether it sounds noisy or whether it sounds vacant, okay, the fact that I was met by vacancies from the mind, whatever messages are going to the soul, whatever messages are going to the body, and no doubt the soul can handle absolutely anything that is said to it. Perhaps that's why the mind is not actually speaking to the soul other than to ask questions. But the mind speaking to the body, we are constantly creating with the mind. Whether we're conscious of it or not, the mind is programmed already. And so it is feeding your system, your body. It is feeding your environment with information. And so what's becoming very important here through this that I'm sharing is a message of needing to be mindful, needing to become intimately aware of what that program says. And not just that, I wrote notes here. I wrote, we rely on the mind for affirmations, because that's what I actually ended up filling out in those vacant spaces, because I told myself, well, if these are vacant, I need to put positive things in there. I need to put healthy stuff in there, healthy programs. But in order to actually put these healthy programs in there, I need to first, before jumping to affirmations, interrogate what is actually going on. And these come up as they come up. This is the voice inside of your mind that you hear. It's like a response voice. And I believe that this is the voice that has been coming up as you engage with other content. Content that, and not in the technical sense of social media necessarily, any content that has not come up from within yourself, that content that triggers a resistance, that triggers a response from you. Those are the moments where you're invited to have a look at what it is, to be an observer of what it is your reaction is. What are you saying to yourself in that interrogation? That's where you'll find those words where there's this voice in your head telling you you're late, a voice in your head telling you you haven't done enough, a voice telling you you aren't enough, that you can't, and also the voice that places a whole lot of other limitations that come up. Some limitations are, we don't even understand sometimes when we hear them internally, how unhealthy they are. And these are very personal. But what I want to point to is when you hear a voice that takes an option that you had wanted to be an option and closes that door in your face. Your mind is yours. Your mind belongs to you. It is yours. And I wrote here, use the mind to reaffirm what the soul's message to the mind and body are. These spaces are either vacant, toxic, or affirming. You have to choose which it will be. And I'm not here to tell you that it's so easy to rewire the programs in your mind. That's not so much what I'm saying. But they're like a ghost in the house that you're afraid of. And you believe it lives in a certain room. And so you just don't open that door. But this is the thing with whether you want to call it a demon, or if you want to call it a scary ghost, or whatever name you give it, okay? That thing that you avoid because you believe it's bigger than you. Here's the thing. In the process of exorcising a demon, what actually happens is that as soon as you've identified that demon, that's its worst nightmare. It's like its Achilles heel. It shrivels up and dies. If you interrogate it sufficiently, and that is these inquiries that I often speak about. I haven't spoken about them in a while. I'll link a self-inquiry below. It's on the channel. So I'll put it in the description box. But what happens is that if you hear that voice, engage that voice. It wants you to look at it directly. You in order to I won't say eradicate it, because what you're actually doing is transforming it, because it's a voice you need. But once you've heard what it's saying to you, that's like a form of arresting it in its tracks. Okay, so now you've got handcuffs on it. And then you take it to an interrogation room and you engage it and you try find out as much information about it as possible before it dashes and runs away with your mind again, with your plans, with your dreams. And to move away from these analogies, what I'm really saying is to get to know this voice so that you understand it, so that you can come to understand its source. How did it come to be? Identify when it came up. Identify what's been feeding it, what's kept it thriving, and then thank it for the time that you needed it and set it free and replace it with its opposite. And that's why I said you need it, because you're not so much replacing, you're replacing the wording and you're flipping the understanding, and you're still keeping that understanding, but you're taking the light out of that understanding, of that shadow, of that darker part of you. And so this is also how we integrate in this moment. And it's like it's instant once you do this. That's how we integrate this understanding. We have an appreciation for this new understanding. And then that new program, that upgraded program, can then be the one to feed your environment and your body with information that serves you. I also wrote here, the mind is what takes action and makes choices. Okay? This is masculine. Whereas the body receives, feminine. The role of affirmations is the way of aligning the mind and to serve it what the body and soul need to support and anchor your thriving and alignment. When we aren't intentional about what we serve ourselves through the mind, our system automatically reverts to habits and old mindsets, and the onus is on us to be mindful about this. I also went and looked into the word mindfulness because I really wanted to come to understand it. When I've engaged with the word mindfulness, I haven't really pulled it apart in terms of its etymology and all of that. I've always just taken the word and accepted it as, I can replace it with meditation. I can replace it with how I approach washing the dishes. I can, be more alert about where my attention goes. But today, this word is taking me into this place that we've been talking about of vacancy, these messages that are coming from the mind being vacant, and that they're either vacant or toxic or affirming. And so this word mindfulness is coming at me as the opposite of mind emptiness, mind vacancy. So mind is able to fill itself with whatever it pleases rather than being filled consciously. The word mind, yes, refers to our mind, the part of us that we use to operate, the one we operate from. But it's also, to mind something is to take care of it. Then the word full, without just like being just filled full, but it's also a suffix that's added to a word to say that word, that it is having. And so that in terms of mindful, that brings us to having care for the mind. And then the ness at the end of mindfulness, it says that this word means action, a quality, a state. And so now looking at all of these, and please excuse me if this is something you already have an understanding of, but I wasn't completely aware, or rather I'd say I wasn't completely mindful of the full meaning of what mindfulness is. And so that brings us to mindfulness is the state of taking care and being intentional about our thought. 3333. And yes, in this moment, I feel like I've taken us down a rabbit hole of mindfulness, I suppose, but I believe that this information is important. Otherwise, why in my moment of mindfulness did I start to unpack what mindfulness is? And so this is a message to become more mindful about mindfulness. We are constantly giving and receiving, irrespective of whether we are being mindful or not. That's why mindfulness is so important. We are constantly manifesting, and the more we believe something, the more power we have over its creation. And so the message is to be at ease, listen, and trust. And I invite you to take a really deep breath in. And allow those words to sink into your being and to feel how good it feels to be reminded that you have everything you need and that you can trust. The invitation to trust is always there. always open and always available. But it's only in mindfulness that we're able to receive this. And before I shared that set of words, I actually felt the pressure in my ear change. And so I heard this as coming from the divine masculine. And it's taking me back to the song. Listen to your heart when it's calling to you. I feel that there are doors that you have closed on yourself. And so, like the song is saying, it's as if your divine masculine wants to access you. There are doors that you have closed on yourself, and so you can't hear the divine masculine, whether this is reassurance, or whether this is telling you where to look, or whether this is instructions, or pure love, information that's ready to be delivered. Because you feel like you've waited very long, you've become despondent and are no longer open to hearing this information. But the greater message that's coming through here, especially with this feeling of this heart awakening, is that you're going through a transition. This is transitory. It's not permanent. And so there are no doors that need to be closed here. And I'm inclined to say that the door that you've been eyeballing, the door that you have closed on yourself, may in this moment be the most important door. That's the door that's calling, but that's the door you've closed. And so what you're hearing is like this muffled, suppressed sound, this trapped sound. So you can't decipher what it's saying, you can't hear what it's saying because you've closed the door. And it's not done speaking to you. And it's not done sharing with you what it needs you to share, what it needs to share with you. And so if you could reopen that door and become more open, there's nothing to fear behind that door. It's the door that you're resisting, and it's asking to be engaged with. And not through force, not through your own instruction. If you're wanting to receive, then you need to be in your receptive mode, not in your action and push mode, the mode that expects things to happen in the timing you've dictated. And I'm not saying do not place any intention on how things should happen, when you want them to happen by, all of that. And if you do that, not to over-attach to it. But what I'm saying is, at this point of this discussion and where we're at right now, you are despondent because you have a predetermined timing that you'd set, and you feel that that timing has failed you. And so now you can't hear. And now we're talking about hearing. And the next set of downloads I wrote down, this was interesting, because I started comparing all of our senses, because when we're being mindful and we're in mindfulness, and whether it's in our meditation or whatever it is, taking a walk, we're connecting with our senses. We're going back into our bodies to connect with our senses. And while I know we have 5 senses, let's say technically the humans here on earth, we have 5, right? And the sixth one, we refer to as the one that's not real. Well, it's the most real, but I'll get to that. But the senses that came up, that wanted to present themselves as masculine and feminine, so to understand that they have a masculine aspect to them and a feminine aspect to them, the ones that came up were hearing, seeing, and feeling. Smell and taste were not ones that came up for this, but I'm going to take you through them. When it comes to hearing, it separated itself into listening and hearing. Listening being active, so masculine, and hearing being passive, so feminine. Because when we listen, we are being active about this process. But to actually receive what listening offers, we go into our feminine. We're using our feminine parts of us to hear. This is the absorbing part. Then when it came to looking, it separated itself into looking and seeing. And I believe that's why They say we are seers because that's the kind of information we receive when we see a visual or whatever it is we're receiving. And then when it came to feeling, it was touch and feel. Touch being the active, masculine, and feeling being the passive. None of these feminine aspects of our senses can happen with too much force and emphasis on them. They are receivers. So when you're listening, and when you're looking, and when you're touching, those are active. That's us in our masculine. And when we're hearing, in our mindfulness, when we hear, if we want to see, and we want to feel, we receive these things. We do not search for them. But then this other sense came up. This other sense we often take for granted. I'm not sure if this is the sixth sense they're referring to. That's not real, But I got to believing and knowing. Okay? Believing being the masculine, the active part, and knowing being the passive part, feminine. And I believe that belief wants to make itself known as masculine because it requires an active process. It requires us to take action in order to shift it, to use it, to help us. And that knowing is something that when we're in the space, we easily move to trying to search for knowing. Knowing cannot be searched for. Knowing is feminine and knowing is received in ease, in peace, and in mindfulness. And what came up next is that this sense, this belief and knowing sense, is the most powerful and it is the most real because it is the one that gives you access to all of these other senses. To know that you can trust them and trust their information. And what they said to me about this sense is that it sits at a different dimension from the others and that it is the most influential. All of our senses, the feminine, are filtered through its lens. And so in itself, it constitutes a portal. The difference between this sense and the others is that it is not one-dimensional. And when I saw that word one-dimensional, I had to just trust it because I didn't want to unpack it prematurely. And I said, it is not one-dimensional in how it operates. It has a dark and a light side. It has a shadow because it is not one-dimensional. So it's actually like a body. It's a living being and has consciousness. And so it is a mechanism. And it is a teacher. And it has a medicine. And so it's not simply a mechanism through which we are to receive. We are meant to engage it. We are meant to observe it. And we are meant to transform it. We need to become mindful of it. I feel like the purpose of this, I almost called it a session. I don't know what to call this. Okay? I don't know what to call it. It's somewhere between a reading and a channeling, and it's important. But I feel that something in this sense of lacking motivation has transformed from despondency to being made aware that you have just been given room to master your mind, to make better choices for yourself, to understand just how much you can engage your mind, that your you now can actually have a conversation with your own mind. So this is you using your own mind to have a conversation with itself. And that's what it is. That's what it is. Because if we look at the heart and the mind, The heart is the feminine aspect and the mind is the masculine aspect. And so now that our heart has been asking us to listen to it, it's sending us to go and address the mind, to spend time with it, and not with the intention of necessarily arguing with it and rejecting what it wants to say, but to hear it out. To hear it out so that we can receive what it is that it wants us to know in order to transform what we believe, so that our belief filter can allow for our dreams to filter through into knowing. And what's coming through is that this resistance was actually taking up space to be occupied by courage and to be occupied by curiosity, because those are two words that were coming through very strongly for me today before moving into this space, this container, to share with you. But it's this courage and this curiosity. And so this resistance, this resistance and perhaps not approaching our mindfulness in its fullness, and recognizing it as an entire body. We just gave your mind life. We just gave your mind life because I know we often talk about it. We talk about rewiring our minds and changing our beliefs. However, we often approach it, I don't want to say simplistically, but we kind of expect ourselves to take a belief and flip it and believe something different. However, that would amount to that's like asking you to just become something different, like that. Whereas that's not how you've approached the rest of your transformation. The rest of your transformation has been met with a lot of patience. The rest of your transformation has been met with a lot of curiosity and a lot of courage. And the mind is asking for that too, because the mind has very much come up today to be looked at, to be given attention to be heard, to not be shut out, so that it can work with you. You are so powerful. You are so powerful. You are constantly creating. And if it's you that feels like time is not serving you the way you want it to, I believe that this is where you need to look. And so I invite you to allow your heart to melt, for the resistance to melt away, to honor this heart awakening. And so this is also for you if you've been struggling with sleep. You're being invited into mindfulness. You're not sleeping. And not sleeping can really result in another negative type of cycle that takes place, because then you're dealing with self-fulfilling prophecies and all of that. And then you try to sleep and you try and find sleep within sleep. You're being invited back into mindfulness. I don't know where you're going, and I don't know why, but listen to your heart before you tell him goodbye. Now that we have your attention, we'd like to call you back to your mindset, because your dreams are still valid. Your prophecies are still true. But we need you to keep the door open. You've been resisting the portal of your dreams. This resistance is an invitation, and we are so pleased we finally got your attention. A whole 45 minutes, and I only pulled one card, the transition one. And so now I've pulled an oracle card from the Heart Path Oracle Cards deck. The card is Swimming Between the Spaces. Think with your heart, connect with your light. I find these words interesting because we don't often approach the heart with the idea of thinking, but that's what we've been called to in this reading, is really to think through what we are feeling, to face our shadow, to find out what light it has for us. I'm leaving the card on the screen for you to have a look at just while I address a couple of things. I'm going to do an extended for this. The second thing is that there are 2 videos that came to mind as I went through this reading. I'm going to link them below in the description box. One addresses a scarcity mindset. I don't remember it very clearly, but I feel like it's important. It's here on the channel. And the second one is a reading that I did, it feels like a year ago now, but it's still very relevant, and it's got to do with a creation that's almost ready to be released, barring a blind spot, an area that may have been missed in this healing process and needs to be addressed for clarity and forward movement. So I'll link all of these 3 videos below. And I want to add that these aren't just readings that I've just done. So much of the content I've produced is what has helped me along my own healing journey. And so I'm hoping that they can help you too. And the guidebook says, the card you have selected shows 3 symmetrical figures forming a heart. Each figure contains purple vines, red berries, and a golden circle placed over its heart chakra. 2 of the figures have their arms raised as if they are swimming in the direction of a green heart. The central figure is holding the heart in place. A deep blue circular matrix surrounds the green heart. Tree trunks and branches grow out and around the heart, enclosed by a beautiful blue atmosphere. Growing out of the top branches are small, sprouting leaves. At the top of the picture are a soaring, red-tailed hawk, 2 frogs, and a yellow glowing sun. Your message. The radiant sun announces a new day in your life. Its power and intensity awaken you with light and love. The red-tailed hawk soars right in front of it, empowering you to experience beauty, peace, and balance. The hawk connects you with your higher self. It helps you step out of your limited perspective and see your situation with amazing clarity and focus. The 2 frogs want you to be flexible and adaptable. Since frogs are associated with water and water symbolizes emotions, they want you to get in touch with old feelings you have ignored. Let them go and embrace your personal power. What you now believe to be true was learned from very old and outdated programming. Put on your superpower glasses and see past that which would hold you back. Frogs show up around practical but adventurous and creative people like you. Sing your beautiful song to the world. Maybe you need to breathe new life into an old project or throw everything out and start from scratch. The large, green, healthy heart wants you to filter everything you do through your heart chakra. Opening your heart chakra enables you to give and receive the gift of love and compassion. Your 3 guides help you stay balanced, and they support you when you're experiencing life's interesting places and spaces. When you meditate, or just slow down, look and listen for them. They appear to you through synchronicities. They are just a vibration away. Affirmation. Listening to my heart grounds me and enables my spirit to soar. Listen to your heart. I love these cards because when I bought them, I didn't realize that they would one day really relate into my messages, and I only pull this out when I feel like we've dealt with something complex and heart-related. And so I am super grateful for them. I hope that you found this reading insightful, and I really look forward to connecting with you again. And so I'll be sure to feel out for you. Again, the link to the extended will be in the description box below and the pinned comment. And please remember that if you don't make it to the extended, you got everything that you did need through this reading. Sending you love.